So I want to continue on the theme we discussed last week, right? Promise made and promise deliver.
Yep.
And it's like so refreshing to have a politician like Donald Trump who really did what he promised. Now, of course, so many things we have discussed, the cultural war, and talking about the dealing with migrants, tariff. But one of the things that is continuing showing on the headline and is being highlighted by Malaysian media as well is this thing called DOGE. And it's like, have you seen how the mainstream media was just literally manifesting?
Yeah, I mean, they are basically just saying that it's like, what's the term? Like government interference. But it's like Elon Musk is the one that is actually controlling Trump, dictating Trump, when it's actually the other way around.
Yeah, and they kept throwing the word constitutional crisis.
Exactly.
And I think one of the things that, now that's why, to our viewers and listeners, if you only read mainstream media, you might be inclined to believe them. But constitutional crisis, by its definition, it means that something is not provided by the constitution and therefore become unknown. So some of the constitutional crises in Malaysia, for example, many years back in Sarawak, Stephen Kalon Ningkang, he lost the confidence of the House, and he said he was entitled to call for election.
And rightly so.
Correct. So there has always been the Westminster Convention, and the whole case went into litigation, and eventually Privy Council sided with him. Of course, eventually the government managed to remove him. Then, of course, we have the Perak constitutional crisis. So in Malaysia, we have, argument over the power, the constitutional power and limit of Agong, for example. What does it mean? Is he bound by constitution, or the constitution give him certain leeway? So these are the kind of things that maybe can cause constitutional crisis, but not when your chief executive appoints someone to carry out some kind of audit. The example of Trump and Elon Musk. Now, you want to kind of go into conspiracy theory about him being controlled. I mean, we don't want to get into that because let's just talk about evidence, right? So let's say you have a company, you're the CEO, you bought over, you spend millions to buy a company, and you want to do audit, you bring in your own internal auditor, you bring in your own forensic investigator, and that is exactly what Elon Musk is doing, using technology, DOGE. But the other things I think a lot of people fail to realize is that Donald Trump actually said before election,
Yep.
I will bring Elon Musk. Remember the town hall on X initially said, hey, maybe you can be the one in charge of the Department of Government Efficiency. At that time, everyone thought it was a joke, right? But this has become the single biggest issue. So why have you been reading about DOGE? I mean, we have so many memes and manifestation. Almost every other day, you uncover billions. Billions to political, billions to associate press. I mean, we are in the business of kind of focusing on mainstream media. So it's kind of surprise and sickening to know that this organization, supposed to be independent media house, actually receive millions and millions from government. Does that mean undue influence? Does that mean they are selling their influence? Does that mean they are taking instruction from someone? So these are the questions that I have. But what have your impression been, this week, looking at all the DOGE stuff and of course some of the reaction from Malaysia even?
No, I think the brazen corruption that has been uncovered in the United States, it almost made Malaysia own case. I mean, we have so many corruption and we thought like we have seen it all, and yet this is like a next level, and it's like more sophisticated, and it almost make us look immature. When in fact, I mean, we also have our own 1MDB case and things like that. It's just the ones that have been uncovered so far. But I remain optimistic about the whole thing, whole development, and really, I felt like there is that model, that prototype that we have mentioned, where if United States are successful in literally just draining the swamp, and you could have like a similar prototype that can be applied in Malaysia. And really, I think there's no denying that Malaysia has the largest civil workforce in the world.
Comparatively in the world.
Exactly. And then we also have our own minister who is no longer a minister, KJ, that mentioned that, hey, well, I agree with like government efficiency and things like that, but I don't think we should like fire any of this civil service workforce. I beg to differ. I honestly do think that there comes a time when there must be an audit that is due
Yep.
on the civil service, and Malaysians deserve to know all this thing. And if there's waste, there is, I mean, logically, you will want to eliminate waste. Then why do we keep waste going on? I mean, not saying that certain departments are not doing their work. I think there are maybe certain departments that are doing their work underhand, but there is also a lot of waste that is going on, and I think that's where we could begin to see that, hey, actually we have inflation because of all this taxation that is going on in the government, and because you need to fund so many civil servants. So I think that's something that will require a paradigm shift.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that in the article, of course, the headline is we can streamline civil service like DOGE in US, says Kyrie. But then he went on to say, like what you alluded, I will not sack a single person, because I think one of the sole point for a lot of establishment media, the elite, the deep state, administrative state, whatever you want to call them, is just the removal. Of course, I mean, you look at the removal, there are two aspects here. One is really cost. And, government has been offering voluntary resignation with 8 months salary. I think the last time, I mean, there were some court cases now.
But now the court, the judge actually just sort of mentioned that, hey, well, I mean, it's beyond his jurisdiction.
Yeah, correct.
And yet he say that this is something that is well within the
The
executive branch.
executives. So you have all these legal suit happening, and different people have different opinion and say the whole thing should escalate to the Supreme Court, because this is the executive. America has very clear separation of power. And it's like, if you're running a company, how can you say, who I can hire, how I spend my money? Now, of course, we have labor law and things like that. And this is not even labor law. In fact, the 8 months compensation fully comply with labor law and some more. It's very, very generous. In fact, the last report say, north of 65,000 people are wanting to accept. I mean, 8 months salary, I think in Malaysia, civil service, I imagine it will be an easy sell. I imagine a lot of civil service people will be like, okay, let me just take it 8 months and I'll take my chances elsewhere. So really, I think KJ is being a bit like double fork the tongue, right? It's like, on one hand, you want something like this, but on the other hand, I think they can't bring themselves to agree with what Donald Trump is doing.
Would you reckon that it is because of the affirmative action that has been the foundation in Malaysia, and therefore you best not try to spook the largest?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, Malaysia.
Crowd.
I mean, civil service. Even KJ will be like. I wanted to say a youngish politician, but he's not that young already. Okay, he's like kind of newer, but becoming very mainstream kind of generation. But for them, the political elite, they always seen civil service as a golden goose. For the longest time, Putrajaya always goes to the ruling government. So I guess there's that fear there that it will rock the boat. And I mean, at the end of the day, Malaysia, if we want to deal with efficiency and waste and kind of budget our expenses, we have to go to the big elephant in the room, which is affirmative action. That this is something that I believe the next generation will be prepared. When I talk about next generation, I'm talking about the generation, the Z generation. They will be. That means the generation after millennial.
After Y.
Yeah, and after Y, and they are not. I mean, the oldest Z will be what, 28, 29, and they are just finding the first 10 years of working life tough, very tough compared to your generation. It's tough. Compared to mine, even tougher, because you don't have easy money, you don't have constant work and things like that. So, yeah, I believe eventually when people find that it is not easy to make a reasonable living, then maybe more people will start to say, maybe we need to rethink of this affirmative action. It's not easy, but it has to start somewhere. And usually that somewhere is pain.
Exactly.
So I mean, waste and civil service. Of course, the other article. I mean, just for fun, right? I mean, this one is James Chin. Of course, James Chin, political scientist. But recently, I think he has been pivoting towards, Sarawak as an independent nation and things like that. I mean,
That
I
has
agree.
always been his core passion.
Yeah, but it's kind of coming out in this season in a major way. And now, since we talk about this, I mean, both of us are from Sarawak. And I always say, look, yes, I think all the decentralization, all the freedom that the GPS government is receiving, they get some favorable gas distribution right. They can use English in school and things like that. They just bought a new airline. They're going to buy a new bank. I think these are good development. But at the same time, I think just looking at DOGE and what has been happening, we have to be mindful that there is a lot of corruption linking to GPS all the way back. And I will wager, this is my personal feeling, that the Sarawak and Sabah level of corruption is way greater and way more systemic. Because you hardly have any resistance. I mean, in Semenanjung, at least, you talk about Selangor government, you talk about Penang government, you have different administration. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, in fact, I was just talking to one friend today, and he was like feeling a bit, this is like a Pakatan Harapan supporter. He's feeling a bit jaded, and he said, there's even reports, DAP leaders are in corruption. When they look at corruption, it really depends on how the news is being framed. Yeah, maybe you are Transport Ministry, Anthony Locke, and awards are given to some companies linked with PMX or whatever. These kind of things happens all the time. I'm not saying it's acceptable, but I'm just saying that if you look at all the things, then you're going to be jaded with all the process one way or another. But going back to my point, I mean, since we talk about efficiency, I really hope there will be some kind of audit also on Sabah Sarawak government. And of course, it's in a pipeline and things like that. If people will really demand, it's like how is it possible that during Taib Mahmud's time, so many titles are transferred to companies just like that without consideration and things like that? Can we see the minutes of the state aid score? Can we see the private account of all the politicians? Because when you look at the Sarawak politician, I think their account will be 7, 8, 9 digit.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my speculation. But anyway, it's like if you're not doing your job, people have a right to question you, right? So like this case, National Unity Minister Aaron Dagan, I mean, it's like, why do we even have a minister like that? Because, I mean, what do you think about national unity right now?
It's not promising.
It's not promising. You're putting it in a very, very diplomatic way. It's like a disaster, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's almost like
So just to, I mean, we kind of sidetracked a bit, but James Chin was asking this guy, should you even still have your job?
Yeah, he talked about the relevance that he should still remain employed on the taxpayers' payroll.
So Dagan kind of came back and defended himself, right? And yeah, but his answer is like, but at the end of the day, you see, he kind of talked himself out. He said, unity is a responsibility of everyone, not just government. Yeah, then in that case, we don't need you, right? So I think going back to what DOGE is doing, Elon Musk and things like that, it's basically, hey, if we remove you for 1 week, are we going to miss you? If not, off you go. Because some of the kind of people try to badmouth DOGE. They say, in fact, a lot of the people who run DOGE are very, very young people. They say 18 to 25. And I think they use a lot of software, algorithm, AI to identify waste. So they say they kind of do, with people who are in workforce for much longer, 30 plus, 40 plus, and this youngster gave them a 5-minute interview and kind of determine whether you are needed or not. So they say, oh, it's very demeaning, it's very insulting. But really, at the end of the day, are you contributing or are you a freeloader in the government?
But the saddest thing is that a lot of freeloaders, they feel entitled.
Very, very entitled.
Yeah, I think that's also like another paradigm shift that we must have, moving forward. Because I mean, if you continuously have entitlement mindset, I don't think the nation will be able to progress forward from all this affirmative action or even DEI, because you felt like, hey, I'm entitled because of my certain upbringing, because of my condition. Hey, you don't understand that had it not been for me being like of a certain color, I could never be in this place. So it's like I guess it's like really requires a lot of mindset shifting.
Yeah, and the whole thing, remember, with Trump executive order on DEI, a lot of people are now complaining we are out of job and things like that. No, I do sympathize with them, because let's say you take 4-year college degree plus university, then you do master and things like that, then you're in the industry for 5-10 years, just do DI stuff, and now all the corporations are pulling back on DI because I mean, of course the executive is doing that, but also Supreme Court have ruled against DI.
Yep.
So yeah, it's going to be litigated, but you are not, DI is almost like similar goose level as ESG. But even right now, you are seeing ESG is facing some retreat. BlackRock and all those are kind of pulling out. But somehow in Malaysia, people have not received the memo, I guess. Like even my company, we're going listing and things like that. We're still talking about ESG and things like that. I'm like, of course, there are many aspects of ESG, recycling, EV, climate change. Well, of course, the S for sustainable, everyone wants a sustainable company, right? We want to have more business, more revenue, more profit. So they are the good thing and bad thing, but all in all, I think it just has been weaponized in a way that doesn't profit a lot of businesses. And that's why now, finally you have the political will to say DI and ESG, we don't want it. But I just wonder when, I mean, your company is kind of hot on ESG also, right?
Yeah, but even that, because this year we are really, really focusing on like business growth and things like that. Even that ESG, I mean, no matter how sexy it looks.
Is it taking a back seat?
Exactly. I mean, it has to, because...
Really? I'm surprised. I mean, you have such champions in your entity, right?
Exactly. I mean, even the CEO has to put on like a business mentality and just say, hey, let's put this on a hold, because I mean, it's more important that the company is sustainable in the first place. Like you have to grow to a certain scale before you could even begin to look at all these things. So I think at the end of the day, it goes back to, I mean, before we even can help other people, we must be able to help ourselves. So if you constantly just feed people, like giving people fish and not teaching them the skill set to fish, I mean, they can never survive, because once all this thing is being taken away, as much as I do empathize with certain people, no doubt, there are certain systems. I mean, our education system has literally caused our brains to be corrupted, and we are literally just filled with a lot of woke ideologies thinking that they are right. So, I mean, for those that are just coming to be awakened from all this ideology, I guess that's where there should be like a systematic way of like retraining and cause them to like really be able to come out on, hey, actually, I'm way more than just my skin color. I'm way more than just because of my certain upbringing. Just because I grew up in a slum doesn't mean that I cannot make it in life. So I think what the government needs to do with little interference is that they need to remove all these barriers for systemic poverty, systemic corruption to happen in the first place.
Yeah, it's very interesting. There is a link there, DEI and ESG. The link is really ideology. And when people are like saying, oh, these are good ideas, but if you want good ideas to be adopted by people, you have to prove to people that it is working and it is fruitful, it is beneficial, it is a blessing to people. But not a lot of ESG. I mean, just look at EV, for example. Yeah, I mean, EV, yes, it is a future, but at the moment, it's just not good enough. It's not cheap enough. And if you remove subsidies on EV around the world, there is no EV industry. So you can see that it is an ideology and things like that. I mean, look at what the new American administration is doing. There's 50 billion for EV station scrap. Like Trump is very realistic and simple. He said, wow, you just go and buy a gas car lah. Everyone get a car, it's still going to be cheaper than our subsidy. So you need some business sense and things like that. So, from what you have been sharing, I think your company, even my company, they're going to ESG. The financial institution especially are the most brainwashed, and they try to impose on people. But the SME, SMI are looking at the top line, are looking at the bottom line. It's like, hey, we need to survive. We have costs and things like that. if you're going to put a 10% ESG expenses, it's going to affect all the line, right? So yeah, I just hope that spirit of common sense will prevail more and more. And I think for DI, we do want to get some other people to come and talk, because DI is kind of a bit more cultural, social.
More nuance as well.
Yeah, and we want people from university, we want people in arts and entertainment, people who work with a more diverse kind of racial composition. And I think they will really have a different points of view. And because at the end of the day, we are a multicultural society. And you want to advance, you have to cater to everyone. So I think the last point I want to kind of talk about, and because you kind of see, like people just, Elon Musk, a few years ago, you will call him a liberal, probably. He will probably identify himself as left. Then, of course, Charlie Kirk was just saying the other day, this is the collision that Trump has put out. So talking about people like Elon Musk in DOGE, talking about Tulsi Gabbard, that just recently confirmed as the Director of National Intelligence. Of course, RFK coming out.
Yep.
RFK is like a game changer, a royalty in the Democrat Party, but that has become pariah. So it's like a unity collision, and I kind of think about this because we do have a unity sort of government, but we are not enjoying the totality of all, right? It seems like everyone is still doing their own thing. I mean, you talk about UMNO, you talk about Pakatan, and you talk about GPS and things like that. I mean, we mentioned a few times already, like that. It seems like the most short-change group is the Pakatan Harapan. It seems like that cluster of voters are the one that have to give up or give in or compromise. I mean, that's a general feeling, right? UMNO get what they want. GPS absolutely get what they want. GRS is like whatever, they still get something. But Pakatan core supporters are not getting all the reform. I mean, we just talked the other day about press freedom, right? It's like Fahmi is like just making things worse and worse. But of course, in many ways, I don't blame him because he has to be receiving instruction from someone, right? But anyway, enough ranting. So I want to talk about the American third force, which is kind of doing well. Now, two questions for you. First is, our unity government, can it even be considered a third force? I mean, it's like, I think we sort of answered ourselves already. Probably not. But what kind of, do you see, what sort of possibility of third force? Because a lot of people, I mean, third force is not something new, it has been around for a long time. Even since 2014 general election, people have been saying third force because people has been unhappy with certain element of both sides, the opposition and government. But we see a sort of MAGA, make America great, balance the budget, less foreign intervention. So this is what Trump's coalition all somewhat in agreement. Of course, the nuance, the detail, Elon Musk and the tech bro still want more imported stuff and things. You get disagreement here and there. But in Malaysia, how do you see, what do you envisage as a potential? I mean, maybe not necessarily a political analysis, but what do you hope to see?
Well, I think we could definitely take a model out from what is happening in the United States. I mean, not saying that each one of them must be billionaires or millionaires, because I do believe that even those middle class who are aligned, they can actually really, really make something great again for Malaysia. So I think, because I was also thinking, I mean, can we have like all the millionaires, like a millionaire club, like forming and like literally just help to improve overall efficiency, just like how they run businesses. But the thing is, I think realistically, we are not there yet, because I mean, there is still a lot of contention against the ultra rich in this nation. So I think that's exactly. I mean, that's like a different kind of battle that we have to face here, because it's like so many people are so envious of, I think envious to the point of being covetous. I think there's that sort of warfare that we are facing, which is unlike like United States. I mean, because Trump himself is a billionaire, and obviously, I mean, you hang out with the same club, and those people are not motivated by money. But in this nation where we are not quite there yet, so there's like different kind of like basically we're motivated. A lot of things are, you can see a lot of politicians are actually very much motivated by the love of money. So I think that's a different kind of thing. But having said that, I do think third force could possibly arise from like maybe even the younger generation. I mean, you're talking about those that are very intelligent generation and that can use AI to just literally revolutionize the whole system.
Yep.
So I think maybe we could have like people from like this group of people where they felt like, hey, I can contribute something. And almost like Elon Musk and his team of like super young, intelligent hackers, basically like just coding everything and like you just do an analysis of this whole thing. And because of that, many wastages are actually being uncovered. So I think we could definitely have like this group of people who are coming out to be a third force, because I think when you look at data, it's not emotional. I think people have to realize that data is just facts. That's it. I mean, obviously it depends on
how you interpret and how you apply.
Yeah, it's just like analytics. So it's like emotions that are to be attached to this whole thing. And if we could have like a group of people that are not affected emotionally, I mean, we're just talking about like emotional stability sort of people, and you could basically just analyze all this data and things like that. I think because previously we also talked about like a lot of polling, can polling survive in Malaysia as well? I mean, maybe not even polling, like, but literally just data analytics and really, I mean, or even how you are applying certain efficiency in the financial institution. I mean, you're talking about like this group of people who can actually bring their brains together and just basically come up with like a different kind of system to actually reduce wastages. I mean, obviously the pain has to start in the civil workforce because that's just the most bloated one. And we begin to see how do we work with the private sectors of various industries. I mean, it could be arts and entertainment, it could be sports. I mean, I do hope that Malaysia can be great at sports. I mean, we don't really have that sort of facility, like world-class infrastructure. We don't have that. And I mean, it's just kind of sad to see because that could also be another form of like revenue to this nation. So I mean, like third force could come possibly from this. I mean, because of how things have been running in the United States. I mean, we don't necessarily have to rely on politicians.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I mean, all the example you give is really the people being part of the third force instead of relying on the political class. And when you look at the example of Trump and Elon Musk, right, both of them are hardly the political class, right? But of course, the advantage they have is, I guess both of them are ultra loaded, so they are not quite motivated by the financial gain. So, but of course, we're not saying that you have to be billionaire in order to qualify, because there are many people who are not billionaire or not even millionaire. They are also not motivated. But you basically have to find patriot. You have to find people who care for the country more than for their personal comfort and things like that. And this is something that as a nation, I believe we can go there eventually. But there's just that sort of cultural stigma, I guess, right? Don't get into the politics, don't get into the government, you get yourself in trouble. That's why you see a lot of billionaire or very, very rich people. Yeah, they want to do some social good, but they try to be not political. And I was just thinking about the other thing, could it be because they are beholden, they are reliant on government because of some deals they have, and therefore they cannot come out to be political. I guess that's probably true. I mean, you can just name a few people who are very, very tied to either this government or previous government. So there is that sort of limitation. But yeah, if someone has the courage to do it.
And also I felt like there is also, maybe the third force could also be literally like a reinstatement of freedom of speech, especially in the fourth estate. We were talking about media in this nation, and if the journalists would do their job as a real journalist and basically just reporting facts as it is without having to pander to any political party. I mean, even if you have preferences, that's fine. But how you vote, that should be your own decision making. But I mean, yes, you can obviously try to persuade other people, but I don't think you should have like that sort of undue influence over, I mean, just like political, receiving monies like funds from US AID. And I mean, obviously you are beholden to the government.
Yeah, you really
Democrats.
become a participant, you know. You're no longer the fourth estate, you're no longer the neutral party. And yeah, of course the mainstream media in America is just shocking, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, if we could have like a group of journalists that would be true to report, and I mean, our Minister of Truth would just be open-minded about this whole thing. I mean, any form of criticism, I mean, take it. You examine. If it's not true, then let the facts pan out. But if it's true, then you also examine and you be accountable, because basically, people need accountability. I think this is a time that is so exciting because any form of accountability is required at any sorts of level. And when you have accountability, then that's where you could begin to examine and have like a real audit of how efficient certain things are. And if certain things are really, really just inefficient, then let's just be honest about it. I mean, we don't have to be like glass hard about this whole sort of scenario. And let's just face the truth. Yeah.
Yeah, so really interesting. And I think to sum up, I mean, there needs to be people who obviously have the gifting, have the talent to do it. Then you need those people with really the passion and you know, quote unquote, big heart for the country. And of course, if you are loaded, it helps. It definitely helps. If you are as rich as Elon Musk or Donald Trump, it helps. But it's not a prerequisite. So we don't want to discourage people who might not be there. But in order, I mean, it's true, right? You can't help people unless you can help yourself. Every time you fly, they will say, right, do not help your child, do not help your friend unless you yourself get oxygen. So that's why the whole thing about, just help the poor and things like that. It's I think the other day, Lanshi was just saying, do you think you can subsidize someone out of poverty?
No.
And that kind of sum out.
Yeah, that is very, very interesting question.
They kind of sum out the situation where, yes, we know they are the hardcore poor and things like that. But I think at the very least, I hope the government going forward or the politician that we vote for, they will, you help the hardcore poor, you help the social system, but you also need to help people to be able to find wealth, because that is one of the way that they can help them to pursue happiness and ultimately contribute to the country. Anyway, I think our time is up, and from DOGE to third force. So I mean, we do have comments and questions from time to time, but do let us know what you want us to discuss. But we already kind of line up some DI, affirmative action kind of thing, which I think will be interesting.
It is.
So we try to do a bit more social commentary, maybe once a month instead of the usual political stuff. So until next time, bye bye for now.
Bye bye.